Out of curiosity, how many have read any of my books? I've written like 18 books. I love you. I love you. The rest, screw you. I have a television show. Did you know I have a television show? How many folks know I got a reality TV show on the Paramount network? Like, dude, look at it. What do you mean, Zellen? No way. Yeah, way. I'm telling you, way. Have you ever seen that? Okay, you remember Bar Rescue? Shut up. Just shut up. I was right after Bar Rescue. The show's called Life or Debt. Somebody look it up. Jeremy, just pull it up. Just to let you know. Look up Life or Debt, Victor Antonio. I have a reality TV show. It's about finances. I help people get their finances together. We did 11 episodes, one season. And the fact that you didn't watch it is probably the reason I didn't get picked up for season 2. Thank you for your support. So because I'm not a superstar on TV, I'm here, right? No, just kidding aside. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with my background, so I'll just do that real quick, and then we'll jump into the content right away. Cool? And by the way, feel free to interrupt me. I'm here for you. If you have tough questions, bring it on. I've seen it all. You can't stump me. You know, I really love the world of selling. I think it's one of those, it's the best way to make a lot of money. Can I just say it that way? Is that wrong? Because I'm like a capitalist at heart. Do you know what I mean? Like a full-blown Ayn Rand, Milton Friedman capitalist. I like money. As long as I'm serving other people and making money, is that okay? Here's what we don't understand about capitalism as a philosophy. If I offer you a service, right, that's my value. Is it okay to get value in exchange? Yes or no? Of course it is. That's all true capitalism really is value, providing, and then you get value. And when I look at salespeople, I'm always thinking, we're like walking business units, little profit centers. Have you ever thought about it like that? Like you are your own business. I know you're part of the company, but you are a walking profit center. And again, when you think about any organization, who's the most important person? Sales, right? Because with that, you will build. So I love selling. Again, if you have any questions, we'll go from there. I want to talk about, by the way, here's my background. I started out as an engineer, electrical engineer. I worked for Honeywell, wrote programming software, torpedo systems, built wireless network, fiber optic network, blah, blah, blah. In case you're wondering, my family's originally from Puerto Rico. Anybody from Puerto Rico? Have you heard of Puerto Rico? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, good enough. So I'll take that. Born in Chicago. Anybody? What part?
Park Ridge.
Park Ridge? Chicago. Yeah. You remember where they had the Cabrini Green housing projects? That area. Okay. It's not there anymore. Gentrified. Cool. That's Chicago.
Is that the southwest or north?
Northwest side. It's like by Humboldt Park area.
Okay.
Yeah. Augusta, Milwaukee, Ashland, 3 streets. Cool. Anyway, so I eventually got into sales. Why?
Money.
Thank you. All right, okay, dude, relax. I'm telling you, it's going to be great. All right. I want to give you a story. I want to give you a story because you guys seem a little uptight. Let me tell you why I hate this group. Can I tell you why I hate this group right off the bat? Here's why I hate this group. First of all, because you didn't watch my show. Let's put that as number 1. Did not watch my show, right? But here's the reason I hate this group. So this guy named Daniel Pink did an interesting study. And he wanted to find out how our biorhythms work. He says basically at 6 a.m. in the morning, your biorhythms like, got a lot of energy, right? And then what happens after 12 o'clock? And then what happens after like 5 p.m.? Here's like noon, 5 p.m. What happens is you get another kick of energy. I got you about right here, which means you're on the what? Okay, which means I have to be somewhat entertaining or else you guys are going to fall asleep on me. That's the problem. By the way, this is an interesting thing. I joke about this. It's really fascinating. What he said was, in his study was, this is like 80-90% of us have this biorhythm. He said, in the morning, you should do your focused work when it comes to like learning because your absorption rate is really high. Afternoon, he says, this is when you should do your admin work because that's when your cognitive, the loading is too much. You just can't think of it. You've all been there, right? And then, have you ever had that kick in the evening? You just got a little burst of energy? He says, right here is where most people do their creative work. I always found this fascinating from a sales standpoint. Personally, this is how you can apply it, right? If you're going to learn something new, you want to what? Get it done early, right? That's why I would do it. But also keep in mind that when you're talking, because now let's flip it and put a customer lens on it. Now when you're talking to a customer, you know that their absorption rate is really high in the morning. So they're really absorbing what you have to say. But also in the afternoon, what then happens when you're meeting with a customer? You know they're in this what? Which means you should what? Slow down, be more graphical, so to speak, use more visuals, ask more questions. really be more engaging. So that's why I'm hanging out with you, having fun a little bit, because I know if I don't do that, you'll keep dipping on me, right? Especially you with the mustache. You're suspect. Terrence Carter. Terrence Carter looks suspect to me. I don't know why, but he's suspect to me. All right, got to tell you a story. Here's my story. I'm sticking to it. All right, let's see if my clicker works. All right, in 2011, a group called CEB did an interesting study. They monitored 6,400 sales calls. They observed 44 different attributes, different things that salespeople were doing to figure out what the best of the best do. And here's what they discovered. That there's 5 personalities. This is the first time anybody has ever done a taxonomy on salespeople. So there's 5 profiles here. Tell me how you identify, self-identify. The challenger has a different view of the world, understands the business, loves to debate, pushes the customer. How many see yourselves as a challenger? Pushing the customer. Raise your hand. No? Relationship builder, build strong customer advocates, generous in giving time, help, get along with everybody. Relationship, anybody? Okay. By the way, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's okay. By the way, the way people raise their hands usually indication of personality. Like, this is unsure. This is like, damn it, I'm sure. This is me. The problem solver identifies problems. Okay, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. The hard worker. Okay. Now, you can't do it twice. You got to pick one. Okay, just one. You can't go, yeah, I just said one. How about the lone wolf? Lone wolf's my favorite. See, my man here, Terrence, looks like a lone wolf. Like, screw you. I'll do it my way. I ain't listening to you. I don't care what you tell me. Do you know anybody like that in this room? By the way, if you do, just kind of look at them. Go, yeah, they're there, right? By the way, so these are 5 profiles. Now, here's what's interesting. We all have a little bit of all 5 in us, but we have one dominant style. And when they looked at the study, they asked a question. During a bad economy or a good economy, which profile did the best? Keep it in your head. Don't say it out loud. You have it? You got to pick a profile. Whether the economy was bad or the economy was good, one profile did the best. Lock it in, just nod at me. Nod? Okay, all right. Now, whether it was a simple or complex sale, transactional or commercial sale, right? There's one profile that did the best. What do you think it is? When you got it, lock it in. Got it? Okay. All right, here's what they found. Whether the economy was good or bad, the challenger did the best. Right? Whether it was a simple or complex sale, the challenger did the best. Now, who do you think did the worst in both scenarios? Yell it out if you know it. Hard worker? What you got? What you got?
Hard worker.
Hard worker? What you got?
Lone wolf.
Lone wolf? You can't answer, Mike. You're out of the game, Mike. You can't play. You can't play. What do you got?
Relationship builder.
My man. Thank you very much. It was a relationship builder. Oh, it's like, what? So everybody was like all messed up when the study came out. They're like, what do you mean? We were told, like, love your customer, hug your customer, squeeze them, wrap your leg around them. Customer intimacy. Well, not like that. You know what I mean, right? Get close to your customer, right? So when the study came out, people were like, but wait a minute, we were taught that's all about what? Customer relationship. Here's what they didn't explain. Back in the day, pre-internet, okay? If you were pre-internet, who had all the information about a product or service? The salesperson. So people were willing to listen to you because they needed to what? Get more information before making a buying decision. You with me on that, right? So now we fast forward to the internet. We have the internet, and what they found is that the majority of buyers, 57% to be exact, were already into the buying cycle, 57%. Let me say that another way. They had researched so much that they were more than halfway to making a buying decision. So that means we're dealing with a more informed buyer. I think there's going to be a new line. We'll call it the GPT line, which is whether it's ChatGPT, Perplexity, any GPT out there, right? Customers are now self-serving even more. How many of us have used like a ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude to research something, right? And you start asking it all kinds of questions, right? Go down a rabbit hole. Forbes just came out with an interesting study. They analyzed leads that come from blue lines, Google blue lines, versus leads that come from a GPT. Say it another way. They looked at people who went to Google, and when I say the blue lines, you know how you see all the search results? That's what they call the blue line. So if a buyer went to the blue line versus a buyer who used a GPT, right, did the research, the lead that came from the GPT was 9x more likely to convert. So that means they were further into the buying cycle, did the research, and all they needed was to talk to somebody to what? Get the reassurance, close the deal. Isn't that interesting? So this is what's changing. We're dealing with informed buyers right now. So, and what's going to happen over the next year or two is that people are going to start using, again, any of the GPTs more and more and more. They're going to become more dependent on those, which means they're going to be highly informed. Anyway, my point is here that the challenger was the winner. Okay? Now, what did the challenger do? The challenger did three things, and this applies to you. They teach for differentiation. In other words, why this is different than that, why that service differs from our service. They were able to do that in a very simple way. By simple, I mean they were able to tailor for resonance. Now, this is an important one. Don't just go, yeah, on this one. Tailor for resonance means I explain it so you understand it. Because sometimes we know it so well, when we explain it, people don't get it. So let me give you a visual. It's really interesting. There's something called information asymmetry. Simply put, it's this. If height represents knowledge, how much you know, right? Height of this person represents knowledge. What's your name? Dante? Deontay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's Deontay. He's got a little mustache, kind of, right? So it's Deontay. By the way, this is how much he knows about the business, right? His height represents knowledge. If he's talking to a new buyer who doesn't know much about the business, down here, this is the difference in knowledge. And this is what they call asymmetry. Because what happens is, when I don't feel like I understand what Deontay is saying, I'm like, you know what, let me just think about it. Let me get back to you. Because I don't get it. So the best, when they say tailor for resonance, here's what they're doing. One of the things they're doing is they're using simpler language, but they're also educating the buyer to close the what? The gap. This is important, by the way, because too often, okay, how many of us have had to buy insurance? Like life insurance, right? You ever hear the guy just start talking and you just glaze over like a donut, right? Because you're like, I don't get it. And so what's your immediate response? You know what? Let me think about it. And usually let me think about it means I don't have a level of certainty to make a buying decision. So keep this in mind that when we're explaining something to somebody, we have to what? Simplify it, but also educate them to close the gap. Now, the third thing they found out, and this was controversial at the time, is you take control of the conversation. Now, we're often taught, listen to the customer. Let them guide the conversation. That's what you've been taught. You've been taught wrong, right? Because, by the way, I'm not saying just talk and not listen to the customer. The thing is, we have to guide the conversation. You with me on that? What's the best way of guiding a conversation?
Leading questions.
Questions, right? So again, have you done the pick a number between 2 and 10 experiment with me? Okay, here, write this down real quick. Just I'm going to write real quick, or just tap it on your phone. It's okay, you can tap this on your phone. Okay, get your notes out. If you don't have notes, write this down. Everybody does this. Don't let anybody else look at your answers. We're going to do this real quick. Ready? I think I can do this in my head. I don't know, I'm not sure, but I'm going to try. Okay? Okay, so pick a number. Don't let your neighbor see it. Pick a number between 2 and 10. Pick a number between 2 and 10. Did you get it? Just nod. Okay, so all you got to do is nod right now. Got it? All right, take that number, multiply it by 9. Okay, pick a number between 2 and 10, multiply by 9. You should now have a 2-digit number. Is that correct? Take those 2 digits, add them together. You should now have a single-digit number. Got it? Subtract the number 5 from that number. You should have a new single-digit number. Are you still with me? Who's with me still? Okay, okay. Now, that single-digit number that you have represents a letter of the alphabet. Don't say it out loud. Keep it to yourself. For example, if you have the number 1, A, 2, B, 3, C, 4, D, 5, E. Write the letter down. Okay? Now, here's where I lose half the group, guaranteed. Think of a European country that begins with that letter. Okay? Got it? All right. Now, look at the country. Got the country name? Just nod. Look at the second letter in that country name. Look at the second letter. Now, look at that second letter, and then think of a large land mammal. Like, think of a large land mammal that begins with that letter. Go ahead. Do it right now. All right? Last one. Last one. What color? Just write the color down of that mammal. Okay? All right. Now, so raise your hand if this makes any sense. There are no gray elephants in Denmark. Raise your hand. All right. Thank you very much. If you didn't get that, you're just lost and you can't add numbers. That's not my. So, by the way, so you should have had the following. Before you think I'm a genius, which I am. No, just kidding. By the way, here's what I did. I said pick a number between 2 and what? 10. You picked what? 8. Gosh, really, you went that hard. It's a hard number to multiply. And that's it. Take that number and multiply by what? Which gives you what? 72. Now, if you had chosen 5, I'm 9, give you 45. You'll notice that no matter what, it's always going to be what? 9. Then I said subtract the number 5. Gives you what? 4. 4 equals D. But wait a minute. Here's where the genius part comes in. Because I said, think of a European country that begins with that letter, right? Now here's what I did to your brain, and you didn't even know it. I literally grabbed your mind and zoomed it over to Europe, right? Because if I just said, give me a country that begins with D, you'd have said what? What other countries? Huh? Really, man? Dude, just leave the room. Don't say, and if you say Dublin, please, if you thought Dublin, leave the room. And we just had Denmark, so you can't use Denmark. What other countries? Dominican Republic, Dominica, my favorite, Djibouti. I love that, right? So, but the fact that I said, give me a European country, I grabbed your brain and moved it over there, right? Then I said, look at the second letter in Denmark, and it's a what? E. And then I said, think of a large land mammal. Dude, that was such a gift. Think of a large land mammal that begins with that letter, which is a what? Elephant, right? Now, if I just said, name a mammal that begins with E, or an animal that begins with E, you would have said what? Eel, eagle, egret, echid, emu, whatever it may be, right? But notice that this is where I want, you got to really pay, I'm having fun with this, but here's the important part. It was the quality of the questions that determined how I guided your thinking. So the average salesperson practices what to say. You'll always be average if you practice what to say. The best salespeople practice what to ask. Because it is through the science of questioning that you start guiding people's thoughts. Dude, it's scary when you really understand how to use this to guide somebody to a conclusion you've already predetermined. So if I wanted to get you to go out to lunch, right, tomorrow, I would set up my questions to what? Guide you to say yes to that answer, okay? You get the idea. This is all we mean by take control of the conversation. You're not being a boss. Where's my clicker? You're being what? What's that?
It's the art of persuasion.
It is. It's very persuasive. Again, you're persuading people because they're telling you the answer you've already told them to tell you. Again, it's really subtle but powerful. But anyway, second, the story continues, okay? So I'm in Korea doing a presentation. It was a great presentation. Dude, you had to be there. It was great, okay? So I'm doing a presentation. I'm done with the presentation, right? VP of the region, Ben Hong, comes to me and says, hey, Victor, this is Cigna. Would you like to see our call centers downstairs? To which I said, got nothing else to do. I'm trapped here. Why not, right? So we go downstairs. We get to the call center. It looks something like this. And I said, Ben, I got to ask you a question. Like on average, how many calls do these folks handle? Because they're selling services and products, right? Really services, right? He says, I don't know. I said about 100, more or less, right? I said, if they close, because I didn't want to ask him about his close rate. So I said, if they close 20%, right? If they close 20%, what do you do with the other 80? He said, and I thought, he was going to tell me, Victor, like, here are the questions I asked him. I asked him, how do you know who to call back? I said, how do you know who isn't going to buy? So let's not waste our time. Or how do you know who's worth a call back, but maybe in a month from now? Like, how do you know this? And I thought he was going to say, it's all good instincts, whatever, the conversation, how it went, yeah. He said, no. He said, no, we use AI. This is 2016, okay? 2016, he says, we use AI. We were using natural language processing. Now, I jumped on this because my first job out of college was working on AI expert system, knowledge-based system. So I was like, what? AI's back, type of thing, right? And he says, here's what we do, Victor. We monitor for tone, inflection, speech velocity, that, you get the idea, all these things, questions asked, what phrases they use, and whether they mentioned competition early or late was a big one. Here's a question for you. You got to vote on this. Everybody votes. If the customer mentions a competitor early in a presentation, is that a good thing or a bad thing? They mentioned the competition within the first 10 minutes. How many say good? Raise your hand. How many say bad? Raise your hand. How many refuse to raise your hand? Raise your hand. Okay? There. So what they found, it's a good thing. Why is it a good thing?
They want you to differentiate yourself.
There it is. Because what they discovered is that they tell you this early because they're saying, we're really not happy, we're not convinced. And the data shows that if they mention the competitor early, they really want you to convince them why you're different. Now, if they mention at the end, they're basically saying, get out of here. Thank you for the presentation. Goodbye. Right? So, by the way, they were able to boost their sales by 37% using AI. Okay? So, this was 2016. So, in 2018, I wrote the book in 2017 with my friend. I wrote this book, which only sold about 50 copies. Because at that time, by the way, to put this in perspective, I wrote it in 2017. This is 5 years before ChatGPT. And I'm saying, here it comes. And people were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Now everybody's an AI expert, right? So I wrote the book. Story continues, right? So I wrote, oh, by the way, this is the new book I wrote. So I just released this one in March. This is about the rise of AI agents. I don't know if you've used agents before, but it's going to get crazy. That's all you need to know. Then the pandemic hit in 2020. It's a full story, right? So the pandemic hit in 2020. Here's an interesting question for you. Let's say you're talking to a customer, right? Go visit a customer. Go to the customer prem. You talk to the customer. You have a 2-hour conversation with that customer. Tim, what percentage of that conversation that you had makes it into your CRM, do you think? Theoretically, what percentage do you think of that conversation would make it into your CRM?
Pretty small percentage.
Very small. What do you guess? What do you guess?
5%.
5%? You're in the range, right? It's like 4% would make it into the CRM. In other words, the majority of information is lost. Keep that in mind. It's a fascinating subject. But what happened is the pandemic hit, and when the pandemic hit, boom, right turn, digital adoption. We all started going online. Like most of us didn't even know what a Zoom was, right? We thought it was just getting closer, right? But it was like, no, remember the days when you first heard about Zoom? Like, Zoom, what? Like, go fast? No, get close? I don't know. So, and then we had to learn how to use this. Now, here's what's interesting. Because we all went online, what then happens, Tim? The calls are recorded. All the conversations are now recorded. So along comes a company called Tether, right? And this is the last part of my story. Along comes a company called Tether. And what they did is they gathered, look at the number, 2.5 million sales calls. Using AI, they analyzed them with over 8,000 attributes. By the way, to kind of get perspective, 2.5 million calls, 6,400. Over 8,300 different attributes to figure out what the best of the best do. And so what I want to do is share with you what they found. What do the best of the best do to close more deals, right? And so again, whether you agree with me or not, I don't care. Why? Why? Because it's the data, right? I've had people go, I don't believe that. I'm like, shut up, do your own study. Then come back to me and talk to me. Until then, just shut up, right? That's it, right? So, by the way, I'm not trying to trick you. When I say I'm not trying to trick you, I'm usually trying to trick you. Really, man? Really? Just messing with you, man. This happened to me so many times. Anyway, so in the study, one of the things they found was that they did a cross-sectional study of different industries, right? And what they found is on average, you will close 40% of your deals. On average, which means if I close 40, how much didn't I close? I'm not trying to trick you. Be careful, though.
60.
Okay, good. You didn't hesitate. My man is like 60. You're like, in your brain, where you going? Shit, I think it's 60. Shit, I think it's 60, right? So you're dead out. What's your name? Brian. My brother-in-law's name is Brian. I don't like him. Anyway, Brian. Brian. Careful. Now, be very careful, Brian. This is where did that 60% go? Careful, Brian, careful. This is like, man, you got to step in it.
Computing services.
You sure? Anything else?
Just side burner. Nobody ever did anything.
There you go, my man. All right, under pressure, he got them both. What they found, well done, man. What they found is 20% went to the competition. And then, I don't know what side burner means, but okay, right? You know, I'm going to start using that. What happened? Side burner, man. Just went on the side. It just burned on the side. Nothing happened. Side burner, right? So no decision. Basically, they set it aside. Let me think about it. Let me get back to you. Now, look at these numbers. What does this tell you? There's something very important here. And it tells you implicit in the numbers are that your real competition is not your competition. Your real competition is what? This is bigger than that. So the fact that people are not making a buying decision is too often we worry about the competitor. Who cares? Stop worrying about the competitor. The fact that they're not buying or not making a decision at all, that's your biggest competitor. Now I know what you're thinking, because I can sense it in some of you. Maybe, Victor, they didn't buy because of price, right? Price. Who's thinking that? I wouldn't raise your hand either if I were you. Because what they found is only 10%. Only 10% didn't buy because of price. You still have what, 30%? Because it isn't the price. You always position your value, not your price. I can show you study after study after study. It's not the price. And if you discount, by the way, there's a guy by the name of Mac Hannon. He wrote a book called Consultative Selling in the 80s, right? And he said this about discounting. He said, discounting is the ignorant tax you pay when you don't know the value of your product or service. That's brutal. I don't care what you say. That's a brutal line, right? It isn't about the price. It's that you didn't present it in such a compelling way. So if people don't decide, what can we do to help them decide? That's the meat of the presentation. Here are the 5 things they found. The first one I kind of gave you already. Control the what? The flow of the conversation using? Thank you. Just want to make sure you're still with me. And by the way, I'll give you an example. It's my favorite example. So I got a UPS box, right? Sally's behind the counter, right? My 1-year contract's almost over. Now, I got the small box, right? That big box, rather, $220 per year. That's what I'm paying. That's my business address, right? Because I have my own business, right? Contract's almost over. Get the little thing in the mailbox. And Sally's like, you going to re-up? And I'm like, I don't know. I look at the small one, and I go, how much is that one? She goes, $160 per year. What's my brain thinking? I'm frugal. $60 is $60. That's like 12 lattes at Starbucks. That has real value to me, right? So I'm thinking $60. So I'm leaning towards what? Going for the cheap one. Sally says, because she sees me leaning towards cheap, right? You ever see a customer lean towards the cheap option, right? Okay. I'm leaning towards the cheap option. She said, Victor, let me ask you a question. Now, here's what I've learned in life. When someone says to you, let me ask you a question, I can assure you, I can guarantee you that it's not going to go your way. Okay? So she said, but I know. She's behind the counter. She's not in sales. I am. I said, okay, ask me your question, because I know what she's going to say. Victor, you want to stay with the big box. Here's why. Easy access, bigger is better. It's going to be easier to get, more convenient, right? Working with this. You don't have to pick up your mails often. Mailbox won't get jammed, and letters won't get crushed. Victor, you want to stay with this one because it's a better deal. That's what I thought she was going to say. She didn't say that. Here's what she did. She goes, Victor, let me ask you a question. To which I said, what? That's me firming up? Like what? Let's go. Here's what she said. Victor, I understand that you want to save $60. I get that. But have you thought about this? That if you change your mailbox, you have to change your address. To which I said, so? But you also have to reprint your business cards if you have any. On top of that, Victor, you'll have to update the information on your website. I don't know if you do that or you have to hire somebody to do that. On top of that, Victor, you have to update all your promotional material, right number. Last but not least, you have to contact your clients, let them know everything's changed. Victor, how much time and money is that going to cost you? What did I say to Sally? Renew it. What am I going to say? I said, renew it, right? I'm not afraid of her, but I said, renew it. Why? But here's what she did. Joking aside, I'm thinking about how I'm saving $60. And what she did by asking me a series of questions, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I'm like, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. And I got to the point where I felt the real impact. See, in sales, here's the mistake we often make. It's a big mistake we make, and it's very subtle. You think, let me ask you a question. Do clients want more information from us? Yes or no? Yes. No. I just told you they use ChatGPT and they're online. Be very careful. Here's information. I call this the lowest form of selling, like an amoeba, right? So the next level of selling is this. It's insight. When you can make a customer go, huh, I didn't think about that. Really? You can do that? Never thought about that. That's insight. Like, huh? And what you're doing is what? Destabilizing their preference. Do you know what I mean by that? They're sure they don't want to change, but once you start asking them things they didn't think about, they go, I need to really think about it. And the last part is impact, right? What's the impact on the business? So I'm not saying information is not important. But if you can give them insight, make them think differently, and then show them how it's going to impact their business, then all of a sudden, it's a different conversation. You with me?
Yes.
Glad you're excited. Good. Okay. Number 2. By the way, so here's the rule. And you know this already? Got it. Cool. Now, let me see if I got this one here. By the way, this is an interesting one. This is so subtle, but this is like next level, you're a pro. There was a guy by the name of Michael Gerber wrote a book called The E-Myth. And he talks about systems and processes, like McDonald's, for example. When you buy a franchise, you buy the actual process and systems that go with it. He says, what you want to do is you want to create a business where you're not working in the business, you're working on the business. Here's what he meant by that. When you're working in the business, you have to be there every day. You don't want that. You want to be working what? On the business, have processes, and then the business runs by itself. How does this apply to you? The average salesperson is in the presentation. The superior salesperson is on the presentation. Here's what I mean. When you're in the presentation, you have to think about what you have to say. You have to think about how you're going to respond. You have to worry about sequencing the right sales process. But when you've memorized that, you become a subject matter expert, you understand the process, nothing can surprise you, you're now what? On the presentation. Here's where the magic happens. When you're not thinking about what you have to say or how to respond, because it's already wired in there, you can see the subtleties. Like when you ask a customer a question and they pause or hesitate or shift their body. And what they found is that the best of the best stop and ask questions. Like they'll say something like, Terrence, I noticed I just said that, but you seem to not believe what I just said, right? And I stop there. Can I ask why? Too often, they're giving us a signal. We just keep what? Talking right past it. So don't be afraid. When you see that subtle body shift, like something didn't line up right, you hear that pause, like they go, does that make sense to you? Yeah. As soon as I hear the, yeah, what does that tell me? My brain, my reptilian brain goes, no, he didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. Stop, ask why. Because apparently they're confused. If you don't do that, what's going to happen is later on, because they're so unsure, remember the information asymmetry part? They're not going to decide. So we lose sales, not in the big things. It's all those little things we miss along the way because you're so focused to being in the presentation, you're not on the presentation, okay? So the next one is, you know what the objections are going to be, right? In any sale, you typically know. I call it the 357 rule, 357. There's 3, 5, or 7 objections you always encounter. What are they? Let me think about it. All right? What's next? What other objections do they have? Let me ask my wife. Let me ask my business partner. What else?
I'm already under contract.
What's that?
Already under contract.
I'm already under contract. Price is always there, right? You get the idea. There's only 3, 5, or 7 at most, right? But if you know how to handle these objections, guess what? When you walk into the conversation, you're not afraid of the conversation. You with me so far? So they did this study where they showed that if somebody speaks the objection, you're less likely to change their mind. Listen to what I just said. Because some of our training, I'm not saying is wrong, but it's a little dated in the sense that you've been taught to overcome objections, which you should learn. Everybody with me? But the real power move is to anticipate the objection and speak it first. Because if I speak the objection first, because I know it's in the room all the time, guess what? Like Orkin is a little more expensive, yes or no? Yes. All right, so there's a phrase. If you don't know the phrase, memorize this phrase. Always lean in the direction of the objection. Okay? Someone says, Victor, you're too expensive. I understand. Would you like to know why? What did I just do? Took control of the conversation. Yes. Would you like to know why? Dude, how many words did I use? Yes. Would you like to know why? 5, 6 words? Think about how fast it was. I just flipped the conversation. Would you like to know why? Right? So again, it's how do we never make excuses for your prices being higher. And again, I got story after story about pricing. Here's what I started doing. If I anticipate the objection, it's more powerful than overcoming the objection. Now, I'll give you the quick story behind this. I'll try to be quick. I'm done at 1:15, Mike? 2:15, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2:15. Okay. Ran out of paper. Damn. Okay. So let me give you the... Good. All right, cool. Come on, Mike. Supposed to take care of me, have everything set up. Oh, I can't work with these people. Just messing with you, Mike. Where's my big marker? Here it is. By the way, this study is powerful if you get it. what they did is they drew a bunch of random lines, right? Like this, just random lines, right? It's two guys, Morn and Deutsch, right? By the way, notice that I could give you this presentation, even give you, quote, the sources for you without slides. The slides are for your benefit, not mine, right? Because I'm not in the presentation. I'm what? You got it. So these two guys did a study. And what they did is, hey, group number one, what I want you to do right here, I want you to look at these lines. Kind of say, okay, that one's about 10 inches, that one's about 5 inches, that one's about maybe 3 inches. And then come up with an average number, an average length, okay? It's a thought experiment, okay? Just think about an average length, okay? Group number two, what I want you to do the same thing, come up with the average length, but you get to write yours answered out on a magic pad. Do you remember the magic pad? For those who are old enough to remember, who remembers the magic pad? Okay, I feel so old right now. See, the fact that you and I only know what that is. What they did is, you ever see, this will come to you right now. You ever write something down and then you lift it to erase it? Yeah. Oh, yeah, everybody's with me now, right? So what they say, you put the average down and then you go, and you erase it. With me? Cool? All right, now this group, what I want you to do is come up with the average size, right? I want you to write it down on a piece of paper, sign it, and then hand it in. Okay? First phase of the experiment complete. The experimenters come back, phase two. They have an answer that they know is not going to match yours. They know it's not going to match yours. So they go up to group one. What's your answer? Deontay, what's your answer? And whatever it was, you're wrong. What's your answer? Jacob, what's your answer? Wrong. Okay? Wrong. And what this group didn't even argue. This group said, he must be right. They went to group number two, who wrote it down, but then what? Erased it, and what happened? Cesar Miramontes. Yeah, I saw the mountain. Miramonte. Okay? Right? Miramontes. ¿De dónde? ¿De dónde? No, dale. So what happened? This group came, erased it, and then, what's your answer? Wrong, Tim. Wrong. And you pushed back a little bit, but at the end, you what? I'm not going to argue with him. He's right. This group, who wrote it down and signed it, I said, you're wrong. What do you think they did? What do you think they did? Yeah, they argued. They said, no, you're wrong, Victor. Why? Why did this group argue to the death? Huh? They put their name on it. Oh, you're so close. You're close. They wrote it down. In writing it down, what did they do? Okay, they made it public. They declared it. Let's just say that. They declared it. So an objection is a declaration. Well, I heard you guys were really expensive. Again, what did they do? Declare. Like, okay, I'll put this in a scenario you understand. You ever have one of those unicorn presentations? Do you know what I mean by a unicorn presentation? Man, it's like everything you say is beautiful. It's got rainbows on it, right? You ever have a presentation going so smooth, it's like you even can't believe it's going that good. Your little voice is going, damn, you're awesome. You're like, shh, I'm trying to present, right? You ever been there? It's like it's going so well, right? It's going so well. And no matter what they ask, you respond with this brilliant answer. Your voice is like, damn, that was good. Like, shh, I know, shh, right? And then it goes back and forth, and then you're done. And then all of a sudden, one person in the room says, yeah, but you're too expensive. And then you can hear the brake screech in that presentation. You ever feel that loss of momentum in the presentation? What happened is that person just said something out loud. They declared it, right? So now you have to what? Defend it. And when you're defending or explaining, you're not winning the conversation. So the trick here is to get ahead of the conversation by what? Raising the objection. That's the science behind it. So I worked for a company, we did software, right? And I knew, I'll give you the short version, I was closing somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 17, 18%. They said our minimum is 33. It wasn't until I started using this structure, blocking objections from the front of the room, that everything started changing. One of the objections in the room was that the software looks complicated. Now, do I wait for my man to raise his hand and go, Cesar goes, it's too complicated? Do I wait for him to say that? If not, why not? Why not, Kellen? Why shouldn't I wait for, if he raises his hand, why is that a bad thing?
So you want to get ahead of it and explain why it's not a bad thing.
Because as soon as he says it, right? But here's what Cesar, because he's evil, I can tell he's evil. Cesar, what he's done is not only did he declare it, right? I'm only messing with you. He only declared, he also what? Poisoned the room. Because Kellen wasn't thinking it, right? McIntosh wasn't thinking about it, right? Fancy name, right? But what happened is now he's thinking about it. He goes, well, maybe, suddenly he seems to know what he's talking about. So if he says, maybe it is, right? So all of a sudden you poison the room. You ever talk to a couple and they're both like pigeons going, yeah, okay, this is what we want. Yeah, okay, this is good. Then one of them goes rogue and says, yeah, but it's too expensive. And then the other person tends to agree with them. What happened is, again, if you don't get ahead of it, what happens is now you're defending and explaining yourself. So I knew one of the objections was software is too complicated. So I created this 4-part structure. There's a book in the academy and a course in the academy on this, by the way, that you have access to. But here's how I block the objection from the front of the room. I'll say something like this. Many of my clients initially thought the software was going to be tough to use for the average user, and that's understandable. Now, if you're in the audience and you were thinking it was too complicated, you're saying, I'm glad he brought it up because I didn't want to bring it up, right? Because sometimes customers don't want to bring it up. And then I say something like this. I offer to resolve it. I said, do you mind if I show you a few things on how to use it? What do you think they're going to say? Sure. So what I then do is I go point, click, drag, drop, cut, paste, show them a couple of things, and then I tie down the objection. I tie down this objection by saying something like this. Based on what I've shown you, Cesar, do you think with a little practice support, you can learn how to use this software? Cesar goes, yeah. Now, because he's agreed to this, he's also, if he says, yes, Victor, right? He says, yes, Victor. What did he just do? He declared that he could do it with a little, practice and support. Which means if my presentation starts here and 45 minutes later I'm done, Cesar can't use the software is too complicated as an excuse because he already agreed that what? He could use it. By blocking objections throughout a presentation, raising them, and you know what they are, and then as you're blocking them, you will feel the resistance go down. But there's a subtle element here that most people don't think about. There's a level of trust you begin to build. Because when you raise an objection that the customer has in their brain, they say, oh, he's not afraid to talk about this. She's not afraid to talk about it, right? You're raising the objections, and that's a good thing. So you can use this. So that was the second thing. Learn, anticipate objections, block them, okay? Engagement style, my favorite. When they did this study, we've been taught to, I don't want to say dance around issues sometimes, because sometimes customers can sense when you're dancing. Right? You see it in the younger salespeople, right? By younger, I mean number of years in the business, is that they don't want to get to the point. I don't know if it's rejection, whatever it may be, you dance. Don't dance. Customers want you to be what? Very authoritative, right? So, engagement style, and I'll give you this example. Kim Scott came up with this model that was interesting. She came up with this model, right? And I love this thing. She wrote a book called Radical Candor. It says, on the vertical axis, concerned about your client, you're concerned about yourself. Left side, you don't say anything. Right side, you what? Challenge them. Ask them questions like, why would you do that? Right? And what she stated was this. If you're concerned about your client, like I really like my clients, but I don't say anything, especially when they're making a bad decision, that's called ruinous empathy, right? If you stay silent because you just want to close the deal, that's not cool either, right? Next, you got water? You good? Okay. Okay, and then challenge. You don't want to be challenged and just care about yourself. What he said, you want to be right here, radical candor. Radical candor is I care about you enough to challenge your thinking. I care for you so much. Because that's what, again, I joke about capitalism in the sense that it is about making money. But I'm telling you right now that the best way to do that is to really be concerned about your client, trying to help them out, trying to help them with their business. If you're selling residential, it's about what? Protecting their biggest asset. So if you really care about that, you sell from that ethos. That's your ethos you sell from. So I'll give you an example of a guy who sells from it like that. It's my favorite story because it's a true story. A company out of Canada calls me up. Said, Victor, what's up? And I said, what's up? It didn't go that way, but I'm just making that up, right? So they call me up and says, hey, you're in Atlanta? I go, yeah, I'm in Atlanta. He says, here's the deal. We got a salesman there in Georgia. His name is Larry Aston. He said, guy's like 70 years old. He's a white cap. You know what a white cap is? It's like, I hate white caps because they don't lose any hair. You ever see those guys who have their hair still at 70 and it's all white? That's a white cap. Okay? I hate them. Because when you go bald, I hate them, right? So Larry's a white cap. Just to give you a visual, Larry's a southern boy, good old boy, backwood, gut out to here, F-150, shotgun on the rack, dog on the side. You with me? You know, he's got the long draw, the whole thing. Love the South, right? Good guy. He says, this guy's outselling 10 of our newer salespeople. Cumulative. Adding them all up, he's outselling 10 total. To which he says, what we'd like you to do is to shadow him to figure out what he does. I said, well, what's the obvious question at this point? Why don't you just ask him, right? She goes, we did. I said, well, what did he say? He said, Larry says he just walks out there, talks to the customer, closes deals. That's what Larry does, right? And that's what, well, it's got to be, he said, just talks to him, closes deals, right? So there's got to be more to it than that. So sure enough, I said, okay, because I was going to say no, but then they said the magic words. What were the magic words? Thank you, we'll pay you. Those are exact words. We'll pay you. I'm like, how much? I'm like, okay. So I've just become a shadow, I'm just start shadowing him. So I meet Larry, and I take him over to Taco Mac. How many folks have been to Taco Mac here in Georgia? Taco Mac is a place they got, 1,000 beers, like all kinds of beers, right? It's a sports bar with 1,000 beers. That's all you need to know. So here's the strategy. Get Larry over there, lube him up with some beers, get the information. Okay? So sure enough, I take him over to Taco Mac, right? We drink one beer, orders a second. All right, break out the notebook. All right, Larry, walk me through what you do, to close deals, because this company's hiring me. I don't really want to follow you around for 2 weeks. Why don't you tell me what you do? I'll document it. I'll submit it. We're done. And he's like, all right. You got to see it. All right. By the way, my wife finally met him at Lowe's because we ran into him at Lowe's, and my wife finally says, you weren't exaggerating when you characterize, because he is what he is. And he says, all right. He says, all right, Larry, walk me through the process. Man, Victor, I just go in there, talk to the customer, close the deal, right? That whole thing. Just that's all I could get out of the guy, right? So I'm like, this ain't working. So finally, it's like he gave me some piece of information that didn't help. So sure enough, I'm going to have to follow this guy. So our first stop, we go to LJ. Anybody familiar with LJ? Backwood, LJ, went to LJ Telco, right? So we get there, meet a supervisor. The supervisor meets us, right? He's the network operations center supervisor, right? We get there, I don't know, Larry introduced me in a very dumb way, but anyway, he says, this is Victor, right? So the supervisor says, because we're there to do a tower top amplifier presentation for them, right? That's what they sell, tower top amplifiers. So sure enough, the supervisor goes, Larry, would you like to see my knock? Right, like that, just like that, right? And so like, let's go see your knock. And so we go into the network operations center, and Larry walks in like this. I swear to you, I couldn't make this up. Larry's walking in and says, oh, that's real nice. Oh, that right there is an OC40. Oh, that's a good piece of equipment right there. Right? Walks over, oh, DSX cross connects. Oh, that's real good. Downspouts. Oh, man, real good. Walks over. And finally, he gets to a piece of equipment. He goes, that right there is a piece of shit. Right? He just says that. But just drops it like that, right? And my jaw dropped because I'm like, what did he just? And then I looked at the supervisor. The supervisor dropped his head, brought it back up. He goes, yeah, that was a bad purchase, right? In other words, Larry was right. And I realized that one of the characteristics of Larry is that he's very direct. Now, I am not saying, I want this on video, Matt. I want this on video. I'm not saying when a customer is working with your competitor, you go, no, they're right there. They're a piece of shit. I am not saying that. Do not say that in your presentation. My point to Larry's story is that the beauty about Larry was he was a subject matter expert. He knew his products and services, and he wasn't afraid. He was a pure challenger. And he wasn't afraid to have frank conversations. Because when you talked to him, it was like he was in love with his customers. He really cared about there was a relationship. That's why I'm asking you to think about it that way. And by the way, you can ask tough, but this is a challenger question, like something Larry would ask, right? It would be something like this. Someone wants a referral or reference, right? You can say, look, if this is what we need to do to give you the confidence to move forward, I'll do it, but always negates everything before that. I'm also concerned that another call, which is going to be pretty similar to the ones you've already done, isn't going to address the concerns you have. If you can help me understand what you're concerned about, what's holding you back, I can let you know what's the best way to address it. That is a challenger mindset. That is radical candor. Because remember, when you walk in to see a client, how much time and money have you spent just to get there? Have you ever thought about that? The number of calls you've had to make. You had to drive to the location, you got to drive back from the location, and you did a presentation there. For some reason, we as salespeople believe that we're subservient to these clients. You're not. You're offering them a service that they need for their business. Do you see the mindset, the shift? You're not begging for business. You're trying to help them with their business. And as soon as you begin to see that as a differentiator, when I do sales training, I'm not begging for business. You're even lucky I'm here, right? I don't say that, but in my mind, I'm trying to help you sell more Because if I help your company sell more, what? The company grows, everybody grows, your kids get to go to college, and you get to pay for it. That type of thing. It's how you see things, okay? So when I'm asking you, when you go in to talk to a customer, some people do it subconsciously, don't even know they're doing it. They take a subservient position because they think it's a better position. I am saying the data shows it is not, okay? I'm not saying walk in there cocky, don't be obnoxious. I am saying you're not begging for business. You're trying to help people with their business, okay? Advocacy mode. What the data also showed is they actually want you to tell them what they should do, okay? So what they found, advocacy mode is when you see a customer struggling to make a decision, stop asking questions and move into advocacy mode. Sometimes we present customers with options and we say, okay, you can either do this or you can do this. What do you think? I mean, if you ever end a statement with what do you think, what did you just prime the customer to say?
I don't know.
Let me think about it. All right? What do you think? I remember years ago, I thought not to say that because my boss, I said the one thing, I go, what do you think? He literally said this to me. His name was Joe Halasik. I still remember to this day. I go, so what do you think? He goes, thoughts mostly. Why? Like, what? I said, what? My brain just all scrambled up. He goes, don't ever say that, Victor. Don't ever say, what do you think? Right? He says, so remove that from your programming. And so what I'm saying is this. We were taught, I'm not saying you were, but in general, a lot of salespeople were taught, is to just present options and tell the customer, you choose. Well, that makes as much sense as, let's say I go in, I got a bad knee. Doctor comes out, looks at the knee after the x-ray, looks at the knee and says, all right, Victor, here's the deal. We can fix that knee, we can come in through here, we can come in through here, or we come in through here. What do you think? What would I say? Dude, I don't know. You're the expert. So who's the expert walking into the room? So when you say, what do you think, you're basically handing over control for no reason at all, right? So your job is to advocate. In other words, here's what the data shows. And again, you don't have to believe me. This is what the data is showing. This is what I would recommend, phrases you could use. Here's what other clients in your situation have done or chosen to do. This is our most popular product or service. You're telling them what, right? This is my favorite one. Here's what you need to do, and here's why. Because when you add the because and the here's why, it gives it more weight because you're giving them a reason to make that buying decision. What's happening right now, I want you to think about this model in your head. When you look at a customer who looks indecisive, let me give you a new model, a fresh perspective on how to look at this. Let me see, where's my other pen? Here. Probably easier with this one. Here's a different way of looking at it. So we're all familiar with business, right? Revenue, cost. This is what? Profit margin. Everybody with that? How much I make, how much I have to pay. Here's this right here is my profit margin. You with me so far? Simple, right? Now, think of sales almost like this, except instead of revenue, here's certainty. Here's certainty. Here's anxiety, right? The customer, when they have when there's high certainty, low anxiety, you no longer have a profit margin. Call this a confidence margin. And our job is to what? To grow the confidence margin. In other words, we got to give them more certainty and reduce any anxiety they may have. That's the visual you should have when we talk to clients. Is how do you do that? How do you give them more certainty that this is a good decision? And how do you reduce the anxiety that maybe the switch over is going to be that bad if they're switching from somebody else to you? Everybody with me? Okay, cool. All right, we're almost there. Last one. De-risking. You guys already have this with your triple guarantee. Is how do you remove risk from their perception? So this is nobody new, but this is my favorite example of de-risk. Remember Hyundai? Back in the day when Hyundai came out, nobody knew who they were, right? And so Hyundai couldn't move cars. Here was the problem. The brand was not known, poor quality perception, right? That's why people weren't buying, right? But what was the real reason they weren't buying? What was the real client pain, right? What was the real client pain? Here's what you have to learn. Remember the visual I'm about to give you, because you won't forget it. All right. There's a difference between sympathy and empathy. How many people believe they're empathetic? Sympathetic? Just confused at this point. Don't know where he's going. All right, that's fair enough. All right, Let me give you a visual, because I'm about to explain sympathy and empathy in a way you'll never forget. You'll remember this day, the day you learned it. All right, you're on a cruise ship, deck of a boat, right? You're sipping on some nice libation, some drink, right? The sun is setting. It's a glorious moment, right? It's beautiful. It's just magical, right? Enjoy it, right? All of a sudden, somebody comes from behind you, bumps into you, the guy bounces off of you, and you watch this guy as he meanders all the way to the edge. You're just watching this. This guy's just meandering. And you watch the guy, and the guy gets to the banister, grabs the banister. The guy bends over, just starts puking his guts out. Right? Everything, lunch and everything, right? And you stand there with your drink, and you go, damn, that must hurt. That's sympathy. Now, if you went over there, put your drink down, you went over there, stood next to him, you grabbed the banister with your left hand, extend the index finger properly, and puked with him. Empathy. Big difference, okay? I am saying, yeah, you'll never forget it though. You got to learn how to puke with your customers, right? That's what I'm asking you to do. Feel their pain. Now, the problem was the brand was not known. What was the client pain? I want you to puke. Why weren't they buying? Puke. Why weren't they buying? Come on, Nathan.
Puke, puke.
Huh? Why weren't they buying? Why weren't they buying? See, this is the problem. You're a bunch of sympathizers. We got no real pukers in the house, no real empathizers in the house. That's why you're not going to sell well until you know how to what? Puke with your customers. Here was the client pain. They were worried about maintenance. Hyundai understood that. It wasn't the brand, the perception. They were worried about what if the car breaks down. All right. What did Hyundai do? Boy, you guys got the answer. You just couldn't get the puking part right, right? So what they did is de-risked it by giving them this option, right? All of a sudden, sales go up. Life is good. Everything's back to normal. Bam. Then this happened. A recession. People weren't buying. People weren't buying. What was the client's pain? Why weren't they buying? Now, before you answer, feel it. Just feel it bubbling right here. Just push it up. Price, no. Sympathizer.
They have nothing to puke.
Nothing to puke. Just leave the room again. Just keep leaving the room and come back whenever you want. What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? You're kind of quiet. Just puke. Just puke. Natty, what do you got? Puke. Why weren't they buying? Terrence, why weren't they buying? Chris, no. You sympathizer, you. Fear, Pat, please take him. Leave. Just go. Brandon, you should have stayed under Pat. Both of you leave. Okay, what else? Come on. Ryan, don't be hiding, Ryan. I like the way you turned your name sideways so I couldn't see it. Yeah. He's like, what do you got?
I was going to say money, getting nervous they lose their job or
Dude, you would have been on the money, dude. See? You lack confidence. You can puke, but you lack the confidence to puke. Because the thing is, people were afraid of losing their... Dude, you would have had it, but you don't get the points, Matt. Because you just did, But anyway, they were afraid to lose. So what did Hyundai do? Who remembers what Hyundai did?
Oh, you can delay your payments, right?
No.
You could suspend
Close.
payments.
No. Cesar Miramontes? No. No, Mike, you can't play. Okay. What they did the de-risk solution was the buyback program. If you lose your job, we'll buy the car back. And all of a sudden, that's de-risking at a different level. One more here. So here's what they found. After 1 year, less than 100 people actually used the program. And then when they terminated the program, look at this. This number is incredible. Less than 350 people actually used it. But look at their numbers, man. Almost doubled their volume because they knew how to de-risk it, okay? And so I think anyway, these are the 5 things. First one, control the flow. Ask a lot of questions. Number 2, if I know what the objections are, how do we block them, right? In the room. 3, be direct, be nice, be honest, right? Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Advocacy mode, please recommend something. Don't just throw options out and say, what do you think? Last one is de-risk, and I think that's my last slide. I've always loved this Jim Rohn quote. How many folks are familiar with Jim Rohn? You've never, oh my God, you've never? Okay, do yourselves a favor. when you're in the car, go to YouTube, hit some Jim Rohn. This is like one of the greatest speakers ever, right? But he said something, and by the way, what makes him even great, he's using chalkboard, and with a chalkboard, he can stand behind the lectern for 2 hours, and you would listen to him. That's how good he is. But anyway, he said this: don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. I've always loved that perspective. So on that note, by the way, there's my podcast. If you guys want to hear some more, 2:16, I'm a minute over. It's all yours. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, guys. Thank you.